Well, guys, you want to come up? I got something right here. What are these? Bean bags. Yeah, and you know what? I learned to do something a while back. I learned to juggle. You know, you want to see me juggle? Watch. Is that hard? It's kind of easy, isn't it? That's not so hard, is it? Well, I learned to juggle by just kind of throwing one up, and it was like, well, that's not too hard. So you kind of start learning to juggle with two, don't you? Don't you? Yeah. And you learn to juggle with two. And then I learned to juggle with three. See if I can do it. I haven't done this in a while. No, I haven't juggled in a while. Look at that. Way up there. You like that? You know how I learned to juggle? No. 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 I taught myself. Because I saw it and I wanted to do it. Do you know, when I first picked them up, you know what I did? I did this. I went. You juggle. You try. Go ahead. You try to juggle. Go ahead. That's kind of like what I did when I first learned to juggle, too. You try it, Tig. You try. Go ahead. You try to juggle. Go ahead. Get them going. Go ahead. It looked real easy when I did it, didn't it? Well, go ahead. Can you do it? No. Well, Topher, you want to try? You going to try? Go ahead. No? Here, you want to try? You try to juggle them. Try to get them up and going. Can you do it? Go ahead, let's see. Go ahead. No? I can do it. Try to throw one up and catch it. I can do it. Throw one up and catch it. See, that's even kind of hard, isn't it? Just throwing one up and catching it, isn't it? It's easy. Okay. Okay, now throw two up and catch them. Okay. Not so easy, is it? Okay, well, let me see them. Let me see them. You know how I learned how to juggle? I actually didn't too. You know how I learned? Well, first, believe it or not, let me see it. First, I read in the encyclopedia about juggling and how juggling worked and how you're supposed to throw these things. So I learned how I had to throw them from one hand to the other. But that helped me kind of understand the basics of it, but I still couldn't do it. And so I sat in my room, and I would spend a lot of time practicing. And I would kind of throw one up and catch it, and throw one up and throw another one up and catch it. And then I started kind of getting it down. And then I started kind of getting it all figured out. And then I got where I could get down real low and do it real close like that. And I still do sometimes, don't I? Well, but you know how long it's been since I've juggled? Have you ever seen me juggle? It's been a long time since I've juggled. But I still remembered how to do it, but I'm still not good. If I started juggling every single day again, I would get real good, wouldn't I? I'd be able to do it really good and not drop them at all. And that's the same thing. That's the same thing about our faith. You know that? We're going to talk about that a little bit today, about putting our faith to work. And that we have to practice. We have to work at it. And we may know what the Bible says, right? But if we don't practice, will we learn how to use it? That's right. Just like riding your bike. You've got to practice. With no training wheels. You've got to practice, don't you? And so, just remember that, you know, when the Bible tells us something, it's important that we practice. All right? Well, you might, well, not right now. Okay, y'all go ahead and go sit down. You can practice later. Right now, if you practice right now, I think everybody would be getting hit with a beanbag. I want to talk today about enduring temptation. Because I know how much you struggle all with temptation. I know it's a challenge. Here's a guy talking to Ziggy, and he says, avoiding temptation gets a lot easier as you get older. Temptation starts avoiding you. Is that true? Is that true? As you get older, it's easier to avoid temptation because it avoids you? I don't think y'all are really tempted real bad, are you? You don't really struggle with temptations, do you? I mean, I don't see many of you, staggering down the streets, or I don't hear, a lot of these things. You must not struggle much with temptation. You're pretty good people, aren't you? You don't have those problems. You got it all together, right? They change, don't they? They shift and change through our life. I want to look at this. This is 1 John 1:8. It says, if we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. John is really trying to spell something out, that we all have brokenness in us. We all have struggles and challenges. Romans 3:23, Paul writes, since all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. All of us have fallen short. All of us struggle. All of us have challenges. Temptations may change, but they are still there in our life. They're still present. James 1:19 and 20. You must understand this, my beloved. Let everyone be quick to listen, slow to speak, slow to anger. For your anger does not produce God's righteousness. So we're already starting to recognize here, we can just say anger. How many of you have been angry this week? Yeah, all right. So we're already starting to find something that we're tempted with, aren't we? James 4:17 says, anyone then who knows the right thing to do and fails to do it commits sin. Okay, who falls into that category? Knew the right thing to do but failed to do it. There you go. Well, so we do have temptations. And we may not be tempted with a lot of the things in life that maybe when we were younger or when we were new Christians we were tempted with, and we were able to work through those. There are a lot of things that we struggle with. There are temptations that we have to deal with. Paul really spells it out here. I kind of went to here because I started looking at it and said, okay, what are a list of sins in the New Testament? What would kind of give us, kind of lay out what the sins are in the New Testament teachings? And I thought this kind of gave us a good grasp and a concept here. But now you must get rid of all such things: anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language from your mouth. Do not lie to one another, seeing that you have stripped off the old self and its practices, and have clothed yourself with the new self, which is being renewed in knowledge according to the image of its Creator. So here we have Paul laying out some of these temptations, some of these struggles that we have, which are anger, wrath, malice, slander, abusive language, and lying. We're tempted with those things, aren't we? Those things are temptations daily. How do we sort through? Because these all have to do with relationships with other people, don't they? And how we relate to others. So we have these struggles and these challenges and these temptations. We're all tempted in various ways. All of us are tempted. We all have found ourselves with the hand in the cookie jar, haven't we? And some of us even this week. The proverbial cookie jar, maybe not the actual cookie jar. But we have all been tempted by something and sitting there, and it just looks good, or it just feels good, and it's just easy, and it's just simple, and it's just so easy for us to kind of go after. Even in Eden, I think they struggled with this. Here is Eve here. She's looking at that apple and trying to decide whether she should take it, tempted with that. And here's the little snake guy, and he tells her, said, that's right, Mrs. Eve. Act now, and I'll throw in a brand new set of knives absolutely free. Because sometimes we look at it and say, well, I really shouldn't, but then there's something else that kind of convinces us, and we start listening to others and hearing what others say. And then this is Adam, says, the snake tells him, Every single person in the world has tried it but you. At one time that was true, huh? Everybody's tried it but you. And so sometimes we even struggle with temptation because of peer pressure, because of what our culture, what our world, what our friends are telling us, what we see other people do, and we're like, well, it's no big deal, everybody else is doing it. So we fall into and we struggle with temptation. I want to introduce you to James. I want to introduce you to the book of James. I'm sure many of you, probably most of you, have read the book of James in the Bible. I want to kind of lay out some things about James. James was one of the first books of the New Testament. It was the one that they can date back to one of the earliest writings. And James the Just, who was the brother of Jesus, was an elder in the Jerusalem Council. And they think that it was probably like 49 or 50 A.D. that this was written. So it was one of the earliest New Testament writings that there was. Do you know it was one of the last ones to get put into the canon, into the New Testament? Because they said, I don't know if it really had, they didn't really think it had theological impact. Didn't really have a big theological statement in it. And that's true. James is not a letter of theology. It's something different. And I think it's very important that it was put in the Bible. I want to introduce you to James and look at it a little bit differently today. And maybe bring it to life. James, a servant of God and the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes in the dispersion. Greetings. This was the tribes in the dispersion. This were the ones that were out, away from Jerusalem, that were out into the world. And the early Christian church really started as a Jewish sect. It was something that Christians went to the synagogue and worshipped in the synagogue. This letter was before they were driven out of the synagogue. So this is why he's saying this is to the Jewish Christians, that's the letter is going to. So he's writing it specifically to those that knew the Jewish background and the Jewish faith, knew the law, and knew what they were supposed to be doing. But yet had accepted Jesus and started understanding some of this freedom, some of this disconnect from the Mosaic law. I want to go through the book of James, the first couple of chapters in James, and look at them and look how they can help us understand temptation and working through it. This is James 1, 2 through 4. My brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy. Isn't that what we do? Boy, when we're struggling with something, when we have a challenge, do we immediately say, oh boy, this is good? But he's trying to get our minds to look at something a little bit different. He says, whenever you face trials of any kind, consider it nothing but joy, because you know that the testing of your faith produces endurance. The testing of your faith. This is important for us to recognize that our faith needs to be tested. It needs to be worked. It needs to be tried. Because unless it is, it will not grow strong. We have to look at our trials and our challenges differently. They are there to strengthen us. So let's not worry and run away from our challenges. That's why James said, consider them nothing but pure joy. Be happy that you are struggling and have trials, because they will produce endurance. And what will that happen? Let's continue to look. And let endurance have its full effect, so that you may be mature and complete, lacking in nothing. You see how they're saying this work that you're doing, this testing your faith, will mature you and strengthen you so that you will not lack in anything. You will be able to have what you need to face the challenges that you need.